So there are three classes of porifera, and essentially their way that we break them down has to do with essentially where they live, what they use as their skeletal system, and then also some of their morphology and their architecture can be used to help break them down a little bit. So the first big one is the Calcaspongiae, and you can imagine that all of these use calcium for their spicules. That's why they're called Calcaspongiae. So essentially there is a ring of straight spicules that forms around the osculum, that exit where the water comes out of the top of the chimney. You can see it here in some of these pictures. So there's this ring of spicules that sticks out. That's so nothing can get back in or makes it difficult for things to get into the sponge by going in the osculum. You can see it here. It's just a little fibrous membrane around the outside. You can even see it here. You can see it really well here and here as well. But if they have that, kind of looks like eyelashes. So if they have eyelashes, if they have that ring of straight spicules around the osculum, that's a very good morphological trait that we can use to say, hey, I bet you if we broke these open, they'd be made of calcium, and therefore they'd be in the Calcaspongiae. All three canal systems can be found in this phylum, or this class of sponges. They contain all three. So yeah, if you were to break these open, depending on what species you had, you could find any of the three types of canal systems. Most of these have been described as being very drab in color. They're not really bright, they're not really beautiful, they're not really highly colored, and that's because a lot of these they're just small. It's just their niche that they have. They tend to hide. They probably could be picked off pretty easy by a predator because of their size, so they don't advertise their location by being bright colored. Most of the times they're just very drab in color. And they're very small. They're 10 centimeters or less in height, so that's pretty heck small for a sponge. And all of these are found in marine environments, because remember, some are found in, sometimes the sponges can be found in fresh water, but this particular class is all marine. So the second class is the Hyliospongiae. Now this is a really interesting class because of the architecture that they have. So their way that they're constructed, their spicules are 6-rayed. There's always going to be 6 points sticking out, kind of like what you play like jumping jacks, or just not jumping jacks. What's the game? You bounce and you grab the thing off the ground and then grab it back. You probably never played it, but your grandparents or your great-grandparents probably played it. But anyway, there's this little thing called jacks, and you step them on the carpet, they'd really hurt, kind of like modern-day Legos. But anyway, they're 6-pointed, and they're made of silicone. And that 6-rayed, or that 6-pointed structure creates a lattice work that helps to form a network of a structural support. I mean, you can see it here in the picture. Here's an example. Here is the skeleton of a sponge. And if you look at it a little bit more closely, those 6-pointed spicules just form an interlocking woven network that's all connected together that helps keep the sponges upright. So when it attaches to the substrate, it uses a stalk of spicules to help hold it down. And you can see that here. Here's the fibrous membrane. These long stalks, long fibers, help attach this down to the substrate. They can have leuconoid or synconoid canal systems, so they do not have the asconoid, all right? They have the leuconoid or they have the synconoid canal systems. This is pretty much deep sea species. So it's thought that this system of having this interlocking network of these silicon-made spicules is to help combat the intense pressure that is at lower depths. So this helps keep them upright, essentially. So that way they can filter feed better. They can be anywhere from 8 centimeters, which is pretty short, to 1.3 meters, which is actually pretty tall. 1.3 meters is probably somewhere around 5 feet tall. So that actually gets pretty tall. And all of these are marine, all found in marine water. When I say marine, I really mean what we're saying is that any place that has salt, so saltwater environments, but we just say a marine environment, so in the oceans and in the seas. All right, so our last class is the Desmospongiae. If it wasn't found in the first two, it's going to be found in this one. 95% of all sponges are found in Desmospongiae, and essentially put, this is your common kind of everyday sponges that you think of. So they're very colorful, they have different shapes and sizes that they use. Their spicules are made of silica. They only have the leuconoid canal systems, so that's an interesting one to remember. They can be found in marine and freshwater species, are all contained within the Desmospongiae. And the most famous sponge we know of, unfortunately, is the bath sponge. But bath sponges are found in Desmospongiae, so all bath sponges are found here. And so, and you can see from the picture, there's all different morphological shapes and sizes and colors. And this one that's down here, this green, this is actually, you're going to find out this is actually the freshwater species. They actually have a symbiotic relationship with a type of photosynthetic algae that actually keeps them green, which lets them photosynthesize. So it's how they actually get food, because you're not always going to be able to filter feed in this water. So they actually do some photosynthesis, which is pretty daggum cool. So look at the life, history, and ecology of sponges. Some of the major things to know is that they are the simplest type of animal, sponges. They originated, and their fossils are found dating back to over 550 million years ago. So that's right about the time that we see a large explosion of life occur. And it so happens that there was a type of a protist called a coenoflagellate that would form colonies, and they'd work together. All these little collar cells essentially would just stick together and share nutrition between each other. And it's from that origin that we start to see the beginnings of the first phyla of animals appear, which are the Porifera, the sponges. Because remember, sponges are just loose gathering of cells that works together for their common good. And we start seeing that in some of the fossil record with colonial protist, which are those collar cells. So RNA evidence shows that they're closely related to colonial protists. So again, colonial protists are the ancestors of all modern day animals. This is a very successful group. They're found in all oceans in almost every single depth. So that's a very good adaptive radiation for this phyla. It shows they're able to, make do and live and survive pretty much anywhere. Sponges do a lot for the ecology of the systems that they're in as well, by providing habitat for other animals to live in and live around. So just like trees provide habitat for animals on land, these sponges, as they grow, can provide habitat for species that live in the water as well. In general, sponges have a bad taste. Because of their spicules, they have a hard texture. Because there's not much there to them. They actually are relatively low in nutrition, so they're not really fed on by most things. They don't have a whole lot of predators, but again, infinite diversity in nature, there are things that will eat sponges and get some nutrition out of it. So one of the biggest ones is a vertebrate called the hawksbill sea turtle. Here's a little picture of this guy up here. They're known to eat sponges. Angelfish, here we go, they'll pick at sponges, get some nutrition out of them. There's types of sea stars and starfish that will do that. Sea slugs are another one that will do that. And in the freshwater species, there's there's a larva of a type of arthropod called a sponge fly, and the sponge fly's larva will actually eat freshwater sponges. Very particular one there, but all of these would be predators to starfish. Or excuse me, predators to sponges.